I mean, talk about physical, talk about tangible, talk about a radically different way of living. So I want to talk about the philosophy of physical well-being today, and I think it's a timely topic because in so many ways, society has set us up for failure. And I think it's not hard to see how. We live in this very technologically advanced age. We're a little bit divorced from physical reality. We don't need our bodies for work or survival so much as we used to. And we live in this crazy success-driven culture where things are moving very, very fast. There's not a lot of time to be present. And then you throw in social media and the comparison game, and your body, if anything, is just a status symbol for success. The messaging is bad, right? So society is not helping us relate to ourselves. The good news is that we don't have to buy in to any of this. We're very free to have our own thoughts and opinions and relate to ourselves however we want, but that is easier to do if we take a look at some of the underlying topics and themes and the ideas that are spinning around in the world today. So that's where I'm going with this. Let's get into it. So there are so many cultural and social differences from where we were before the Industrial Revolution. I am not a history buff. I kind of wish I was. I'm not a history nerd. I'm like an arts and philosophy nerd. But I do want to talk about just a couple of the biggest that anybody could point out. And the first is that the physical demands of our life today are way less. Most of us don't need to do physical work to survive. Everyone used to. So that's the first one that's made a huge difference in how we relate to our bodies and use them every day. Then another huge one is the fact that we live in a very fast-paced society. Things are quick. They used to be way slower. And today, right now, efficiency is the name of the game. If you want your business to be a success, do what everyone else is doing, but do it faster. If you want to be a success in the workplace yourself, do what everyone else is doing, but do it faster. It's a really different kind of work and environment and a very different place to live, and this has made some huge differences in the way we relate to ourselves as people overall, and in terms of our bodies, how we relate to our physical forms and having a body. I think a lot of people today maybe wish they didn't even have one, and that's kind of crazy, but that's sort of where we are right now. So just to highlight the difference here, if we were to imagine that we were in the pre-industrial revolution world, when you get up in the morning and you go out to do your work, it will probably be very physically intensive all day. And then when you eat food, it's something that you either killed or you dug up from the earth. I mean, talk about physical, talk about tangible, talk about a radically different way of living. Today, most of us never need to go outside unless it's to walk into our cars. And if your car's in a garage, you still don't have to go outside. We live hugely sheltered lives. Many of us, at the physical demands of our work, are typing on a keyboard. That is often it, which is nuts. I mean, that is insane. So the differences that makes in how we feel about ourselves are vast. And I don't think we'll even know all of the ramifications of this, but it's a huge shift. It used to be that physical discomfort was a given. You knew when you got up in the morning that you were going to go do several difficult things, probably before you ate breakfast. Our society is built around taking out discomfort, taking out inconvenience, making things easier and more comfortable, which makes sense. It's not like people back then weren't trying to be more comfortable. They just didn't have the means of accessing it right away like we do today. And one of the results of this, of having non-physical work and being removed from discomfort, is that we don't think about our bodies. We don't really identify with them so much as a part of who we are. It's not necessarily a part of myself. Whereas if you're doing physical work all day, it's like your body allows you to do your work, and work is part of how we identify with who we are. So for many of us, my brain feels like who I am, right? And then this is sort of superfluous. So there's that element. We're not as naturally connected to ourselves because our bodies aren't part of our work, and that's just different. The benefit to having to do physical work and difficult things all the time is you can watch your body adapt. It will change. It will help you. And if you get really injured, your body heals. Honestly, our bodies are amazing. And when you have to put them to the test is like the best chance to see that. So for people who are athletes, they have this understanding. That's one of the best things I think about having sports in schools, is it teaches people, at least while they're young, to try and connect to their bodies in a tangible way. So many of us, once we hit adulthood, we're like, yeah, that was when I was a kid. And so the effect still happens. We don't challenge ourselves, and we don't let our bodies impress us, and we don't really see how they're a part of us because it's not part of our work. I don't know, in school, I had a classmate who was a visual artist, and she worked a lot with pottery, and her hands were so strong. And I mean, just think of that. It's a very concrete thing. She's a potter. She works with clay. She designs things. She's an artist. This is part of her identity. And her hands being strong is part of her identity. Most of us, we have these in very tiny ways. Maybe you type really, really fast. That's your body adapting to your work. It's just that it's such a small version of what it used to be. Imagine you get up and work in the fields every day. So you have all this strength in your arms and your legs because you work. And your body helps you do your work, and now you've got like this teammate mentality going on. Many of us today, we only notice our bodies if something goes wrong. Our body is now a nuisance. That's when most of us notice that we have a body, is when it gets in the way. Or we notice it if we're comparing to someone else and we compare badly. Oh, I don't look as good as they do. Which brings me to difference number 2. Our bodies are used as a status symbol, and that's not new. Beautiful people have always been appreciated. Everybody wants to be really beautiful and attractive. That's not new, but social media is, right? The insane amount of like access to viewing other people who all look perfect and then looking at yourself and knowing that you don't, that's new. Then we know the ramifications of that are intense. It's obviously made a difference in how we relate to ourselves. It's an objectifying of the body. So we see our physical form is just a status symbol, and usually not a good one, right? We usually don't measure up to the perfect filtered photos that we see online. Then the other thing, to go back to the speed, like the pace of society today, things move so fast that you're expected to do a lot of work. And there's this expectation too of like being a completely self-made person. That's a huge theme today. The idea of making a ton of money, being really well established as quickly as possible, please. Never mind that there's a huge recession and a pandemic. Like these are the stories that we're told. Like, oh, you can have it all, and you should. And if you haven't figured it out, I don't actually know what you're doing wrong. But you're definitely doing something wrong. So just work harder, I think, is what we need to do. Just keep going, like go faster, please. And it just ties in this need, this emphasis on always doing everything faster. Not only does it take away from the fact that we need time to rest, it adds to this idea that our body is a hindrance. Because most of us have non-physical jobs, and then we only notice our bodies when something goes wrong. Suddenly, the attitude we have towards our bodies is that they are always getting in the way. I would work more, but I'm tired. I would work more, but I'm sick. So I'm not achieving these arguably impossible standards. And the one I blame is myself. But then in order to not blame myself, sometimes we divorce ourselves from our bodies and we just kind of blame this. We say, oh, well, this is getting in my way. I would be achieving more, but I guess I have to sleep. I guess I have to eat. How many of us, if we could, would just not have a body? Can you imagine if science advanced and they were like, you can be a cyborg, you won't need to eat, you don't need to sleep? Like, imagine if it was somehow normal and you could have a social life. Like, how many people would want to do that? People would. Not everybody, but a whole class of like the elite who are just really busy achieving. Yeah, because your body just gets in the way. I mean, it's a really different way of like thinking about ourselves and relating to ourselves, and it's not a healthy one. It was really amazing in theater being told, like, this is your tool. This is how you're going to communicate. You need to be in touch with your body. You must be healthy. You must take care of yourself. If you see your body as part of who you are, not as a hindrance, not as a status symbol that isn't measuring up, but just part of who you are, just like this amazing, beautiful tool that's here to help you live your life. It's amazing. It's really exciting. It's really cool. Then when you want to do something difficult, like let's say you want to get in shape, you're like, okay, body, let's go. I'm going to give you hard stuff to do and we're going to get through it. And this is going to be great. Or it's going to be really hard, but let's do it. It's a very different attitude. Or looking at challenges that are physically hard and saying, I can do that. And I want to do that. And I'm going to do that. The good news is that as much as our society is insane, it can't erase the fact that we do still use our eyes to see and our skin to touch everything and our mouth to eat. Like, we still have bodies and we still use them every day. So we are still in a physical world. That's good. Every day, that's good. So the two things we can try and do in order to mitigate some of these bad ideas or poor ways of relating to ourselves. The first one is just to absolutely be aware. What are your own standards for success? Like, what have we taken in for ourselves that we're holding ourselves to in order to feel like satisfied and good about ourselves and our lives. Many times we take in things without realizing it, totally understandable, but then we get really stressed and really anxious, and we often don't achieve to whatever we have in our head that society has been telling us we need to do in order to be successful and to be happy. And that can lead to a lot of misery and a lot of self-blame and all of this. So if we can decide for ourselves, what do we want from life? What is my own personal metric for success? And then take into account what in reality is possible. Like, know who you are, know how your body is, and the fact that you need a certain amount of sleep every night and to eat decent food and these kinds of things. How can we make room to be present in reality and to acknowledge our physical forms and have that not be an absolute obstacle? Because it shouldn't be, doesn't need to be. And so with that, the second one is to find ways of being somehow like physically present. If your job doesn't require almost any use of your body, what can you do in your life that does? Like maybe go dancing or learn a sport or just wiggle your toes on the carpet once in a while. I'm really not kidding. Anything to have common positive associations with your body as opposed to just negative ones where you feel like, oh, it's getting in the way again. That's how so many of us relate to our bodies. It doesn't have to be the case. We are connected to our physical forms, and it's a good thing. It's really a gift. It's very cool, actually. And we can kind of reshape that way of thinking if we want. So that was a lot of thoughts on a kind of big topic. I tried to organize them, and then I feel like it still kind of got a little disorganized, but that's okay. Hopefully this gave you some interesting food for thought, something you can take with you throughout the day. I am going to do a part 2 for this video with some actual concrete ways of adjusting our thinking and like practices we can put into our lives if you are wanting to get a little bit more connected to physical reality. So that's coming out next week. Keep an eye out if you're interested. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you next time.